Greetings, my friends. I want to thank you all for subscribing. I want to thank all of my channel members for supporting me in this endeavor to save pop culture. And if you are not subscribed, please consider supporting this channel. We need you. Thank you. My friends, I have seen Andor Season 2, Episodes 1 through 3, and I must tell you that as a Star Wars fan, and as a fan of spy/war movies, I'm conflicted in my reaction to these first 3 episodes. I'm going to ask you to please bear with me and watch this video to the end, because at one point in this review you're going to think you know my opinion, but my opinion is complicated, and I don't want you to get me wrong. In this spoiler-free review, I'm going to break things apart and review these episodes by 2 separate criteria. I'm going to review Andor in terms of Star Wars, and I'm going to review Andor in terms of being a wartime spy caper story. What do I mean by that? To me, a wartime spy caper story tells a tale of a covert military operation involving stolen intelligence, typically with some level of infiltration, in order to achieve an important aim. The Guns of Navarone is a good example, or Where Eagles Dare. These movies are always slow burns because the majority of these movies involve the planning of the operation, the preparation, the intelligence gathering. There are moments of great danger behind enemy lines. There's always some action that necessarily pops up as these covert ops get discovered by the Germans or the bad guys of the day, of whatever nationality. But the big action set piece doesn't occur until the end, when they're going into the fortress, blowing up the guns, stealing the special prototype aircraft, gathering the special intelligence that headquarters needs. That's when the shit hits the fan in such movies, but until that point, you have to be the kind of person who enjoys watching the plan unfold. This was essentially every episode of Mission Impossible. You get to know the operatives, get to know the plan, the stakes get raised higher and higher, not because of direct actions and shootouts and fights and whatnot, but by your understanding of the stakes and how you've gotten to know the operatives involved. Andor in both seasons falls squarely into this genre. This is not a swashbuckling, rollicking fun romp like the original Star Wars was. This is a Cold War thriller set in outer space. It is well paced for a war spy movie, communicating something like 4 or 5 different storylines in different locations, but it will tax your patience if you're not a fan of these kinds of slow burn military operation stories. I happen to love this sort of thing myself. I enjoy the subtle nuances of stories like this, the logistical and military implications, watching the pieces come together, and on this level, for me, Andor succeeds brilliantly. The scripts are something of a miracle, in my opinion, because they came out of Lucasfilm. The same Lucasfilm that produced the idiotic, drooling scripts for Obi-Wan Kenobi and The Acolyte and Book of Boba Fett, rambling bullshit garbage seemingly written by writers who repeatedly tried to milk donkeys and have the dents in their heads to prove it. Nope. These Andor scripts were written by actual writer Tony Gilroy, who clearly knows what he's doing, and he does it pretty damn well. This is one of the very, very few Disney Plus shows that has held my attention the entire way through, and not once did I check my watch, desperately hoping that it would be over. On the contrary, if Disney had posted all of Andor Season 2, I'd still be binging it right now. The acting is superb, the photography, the art direction, all these elements are outstanding. Andor Season 2 is excellent as a war/spy movie. Now, on the other hand, the question is it good Star Wars? Are these the droids we've been looking for since Disney bought Star Wars? And the answer to that question is no. No, this is not good Star Wars, I'm sorry to say. Folks, Star Wars was many things. It was a visual feast. It showed us an entire lived-in galaxy full of wonders and an embarrassment of riches in terms of monsters and ships and droids. Star Wars was full of heroic heroes and villainous villains in the best classic sense of the words, with traditional themes of good and evil, black and white. It was a throwback to the serials of old, comic books, science fiction pulp novels, and most of all, Star Wars was fun. Not just fun. It was an explosion of exuberance that captured the imagination of an entire generation, and as a kid, it became my obsession. Star Wars was a masterpiece of joy, and that is where Andor fails miserably. There is no lighthearted fun to be found in Andor. There is no joy here. There's very little swashbuckling, or action for that matter, although the action and swashbuckling when it comes is very satisfying because they've raised the emotional stakes so much with the slow burn. But even the action scenes are nothing like the original Star Wars, and as Star Wars, Andor, I'm sad to say, is a failure. It's just not that kind of story. This is a war/spy movie set in the Star Wars universe that is not in and of itself Star Wars. And I think that's why many Star Wars fans are unhappy with it, even angry about it, because it contains the kind of gritty, mature themes you'd expect in a war is hell movie. Andor Season 2 is going to divide the remaining Star Wars fandom, and that divide will fall along the lines of those who, like me, are not bored by slow burn stories of military operations, undercover operatives, and wartime heroics and sacrifices, and on the other hand, those who quite reasonably expect and require any project with the name Star Wars on it to be fun and exciting, like Star Wars was once upon a time in that galaxy far, far away. And that, my friends, is the bottom line. Now, I said I wouldn't give any spoilers about Andor Season 2, these first 3 episodes, but it's not a spoiler if it was clearly in the trailer, so I'll say that my favorite aspect of the first 3 episodes was the operation to steal a prototype TIE fighter. All the stuff with the TIE fighter is outstanding in my opinion. I really loved it. It's a beautiful ship. It's a credible operation. It's a very, very interesting part of the story. Cassian Andor, as played by Diego Luna, is a character that has grown on me over time. I find him compelling and believable. Likewise, Mon Mothma and the art dealer played by Stellan Skarsgård, as they deal with unexpected challenges this season and are forced to address threats to their security as underground members of the rebellion. It's also no surprise to say that we get to see more of the development of the Death Star as Director Krennic, skillfully portrayed by Ben Mendelsohn, assembles a team to address a pressing design issue. And we see more of the Empire's brutal, ruthless treatment of ordinary people under their tyrannical reign, which of course raises the stakes and makes us care more about the rebellion on a gut level. So that when Cassian Andor uses that TIE fighter against the Empire, we enjoy it greatly. But again, this is not the Star Wars fans have been looking for. It's set in the Star Wars universe and intelligently uses those building blocks to advance its narrative, but the fun has been omitted, and what remains is fascination in watching the narrative unfold. There are a few bumps in the road. There's an encounter that Andor basically gets pinned between 2 groups, and I think that goes on too long and it stalls kind of the narrative a bit. That's the worst part of the first 3 episodes. But in general, episodes 1 through 3 move at a very satisfying pace, in my opinion. One final note, and this is a spoiler of sorts, but it must be addressed, so if you don't want this spoiler, turn it off, although it's been widely publicized. And here is yet another instance of exactly how this is not our Star Wars. There is an attempted assault of a sexual nature on a female character. It is fairly brutal and disturbing, and this is not the kind of thing that belongs in a fairy tale set in a galaxy far, far away. But that said, it is the kind of thing you find in war movies, so again, where you fall on this scene is again along that divide. Folks, we will be reviewing Andor in more depth tonight on Pop Culture Breakdown at 7 Central, 5 Pacific, and I suspect I will be one of the few defenders of Andor on the panel, although I will not be defending it in terms of being faithful to the spirit of George Lucas's Star Wars. I don't think there's any way to defend that, but I will defend Andor in terms of being an excellent example of a wartime spy movie and one of the few things on Disney Plus I've actually enjoyed. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.
Ha 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 ha.